As humanity began to expand across the Sol system, their need for resources increased exponentially. Fortunately, the system's main asteroid belt, located between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter, consisted of millions of asteroids rich in mineral deposits to further fuel the species' expansion. With the advent of Epstein drive technology, the belt and the outer planets beyond it became easily accessible to Earth and Mars, and were swiftly colonized in order to mine them. The people in these colonies had to contend with living and working in the harsh vacuum of space, spending their entire lives in cramped ships and stations, and relying entirely on Earth and Mars for basic human needs, such as food, water, and oxygen. Generations of living in microgravity saw the colonists undergo anatomical changes, most notably a reduction in bone density, which meant that they could no longer live on planets with significant surface gravity. This biological exile, along with significant cultural and linguistic differences, born from a society that had to adjust to the harshness of space, saw many citizens of the inner planets looking down on the people of the belt, often referring to them as belters, and treating them as second-class citizens. All of these factors combined led to the belters being easily exploited by the inner planets. In response, belters began to band together in order to push back against this oppression. One such group became known as the Outer Planets Alliance, a name which belters across the system rallied behind, and has since become synonymous with representing belter interests. However, it is important to note that the OPA at this time was not a singular organization, but rather a blanket title for a variety of belter collectives, ranging from activist groups and labor unions to crime syndicates and insurgent cells. The OPA name and the associated split circle emblem, often seen as graffiti on belter ships and stations, was adopted by many as a symbol of solidarity, representing the common interest to no longer be subjugated by Earth and Mars. To some, however, the OPA represented more than a token of solidarity. They believed that the belt and the outer planets could be unified into a singular state, able to contend with the United Nations and the Martian Congressional Republic on even terms. An example of such a movement could be found on Ceres Station, a large population center and arguably the most important trade hub in the belt. Ceres had a particularly strong OPA presence. The most significant faction here was led by Anderson Dawes, a man who strongly believed in transforming the OPA into a legitimate government. When the UN withdrew from Ceres, Dawes' OPA took over governance of the station, granting the OPA name a new facet of legitimacy and setting a precedent for belter self-governance. While there were other belter factions on Ceres, some with opposing views, Dawes' OPA became synonymous with Ceres Station and would move on to be a major player across the Sol system. Elsewhere in the belt, a profound example of belter oppression that the OPA stood against was the massacre of Anderson Station. When a group of workers went on strike and took over the station to protest their poor working conditions, the UN responded by dispatching a warship commanded by Marine Colonel Fred Johnson. Unaware that the protesters had surrendered when faced by the military, Johnson ordered an attack on the station, killing thousands of civilians. This incident was broadcast throughout the belt as a deterrent, causing outrage, and Johnson was dubbed the Butcher of Anderson Station. Despite being given the Medal of Honor for ending the uprising, Johnson felt severe remorse for his actions and resigned from the UNMC. Seeking some form of atonement, he withdrew to the belt, where he was found and subsequently recruited by Anderson Dawes. Fred Johnson would go on to campaign heavily for belter interests, eventually becoming an OPA spokesperson and leader of a faction operating out of Tycho Station. Due to their personal history and shared goal of a unified belt, Johnson and Dawes would frequently work together to improve belter lives. With his focus on diplomacy and peaceful conflict resolution, Johnson became known as a hero of the belt and gave the Tycho OPA an air of political legitimacy. leading to the faction garnering a measure of acceptance by the UN and MCR as a sovereign entity representing the belt. While a unified free belt was a common ideal, not everyone shared Johnson's belief that this could be achieved peacefully. Many OPA factions believed that violence was the only means to enact change. One such extremist faction was led by Marco Inaros, an exceptionally charismatic and idealistic leader who would stop at nothing to ensure freedom for the belt by any means necessary. Inaros' disregard for collateral damage and frequent attacks on civilian targets would lead to him being labeled a terrorist by Earth, Mars, and even other OPA factions. While Dawes and Johnson's factions worked to legitimize the Outer Planets Alliance, and extremist cells such as Black Sky and the Inaros OPA fought for freedom under the OPA banner through terrorist attacks, others still would affiliate themselves with the OPA purely for personal gain. Crime syndicates, such as the Golden Bough Society, did little to contribute to the Belter cause, focusing more on running extortion rackets and other illicit enterprises throughout the belt. These syndicates would only act in line with OPA goals when it was convenient for them, and many likely used the OPA name solely as a cover for their criminal activities. Nevertheless, other factions would frequently turn to these cartels for manpower, weapons, and other black market commodities to aid in their respective causes. As these various factions continued to operate throughout the Sol system in the interest of Belter freedom and unity, the OPA started to resemble a real alliance, largely owing to the efforts of Fred Johnson and Anderson Dawes. While still mostly decentralized, leaders of all types of factions frequently came together to discuss how to act following major events across the system, and thus a level of organization and consensus began to emerge among the Belters. One such event was the formation of the alien ring gate at the edge of the Sol system following the Eros incident. The inner planets responded to this event by launching a joint expedition to study the phenomenon. Fred Johnson and Anderson Dawes saw this as a perfect opportunity to represent the belt and accelerated their plans to form a unified OPA navy. The LDSS Nauvoo, a Mormon generation ship built by Tycho, was swiftly repurposed as a warship, becoming the largest weapons platform in the system. Now called the Behemoth, this ship joined the UN and MCR convoy to the ring, demonstrating to the inner planets that the OPA was to be taken seriously. Following the Slow Zone incident, it was decided that the Behemoth was to remain in the ring space to serve as a traffic control and resupply hub for the ring network. The ship was once again retrofitted to serve this purpose and renamed to Medina Station. With this hub owned by the OPA Navy, Belters essentially controlled access to the star systems beyond the ring gates. This gave the OPA an invaluable asset when contending with the inner planets, and Medina would go on to play a pivotal role in many conflicts to come. The importance of Medina Station did not escape ideological extremists such as Marco Inaros. Believing that the Belters had a right to the systems beyond the ring, Inaros organized a series of crippling attacks on Earth, Mars, and Tycho Station. Rallying other Belter factions to his cause, and aided by a renegade Martian faction supplying him with state-of-the-art weapons and warships, Inaros formed a new alliance of Belters, dubbed the Free Navy, and plunged the entire Sol system into a brutal conflict that fractured the tentative alliance that people like Fred Johnson had worked to establish. The Free Navy conflict demonstrated that Belters could no longer be subjugated by the inner planets. Despite the bloodshed and the OPA being all but dissolved, control of Medina Station and a severely diminished UN and MCR meant that a bright future lay ahead for Belter sovereignty and equality.